I originally wasn't planning on making this video, since it seemed like the combination of Spare shying away from hard rock and inconclusive evidence made a follow-up video pretty unnecessary. But, oh how wrong I was. Because so much has happened that not making a follow-up video at this point would actually be doing this case a disservice. Because somehow, it's only gotten more insane and complex. So, let's get into it. When I concluded the last video, I touched on how one of the most suspicious things that he did was his departure from hard rock right after people began to suspect him of hacking. But that became outdated pretty quickly when only a couple days after my video came out, he began playing hard rock in McOsu, which was actually a pretty good call on his part, because McOsu uses different code than OSU stable, and so it would be essentially impossible to hack. And during one play on the stream, he even peaked at 900 pp, although for the life of me I can't seem to find it. The thing is that he was very clearly playing a bit worse than when he was streaming hard rock and set plays on Cry Thunder and Angreifer, but everyone has bad days, and this certainly could have been one of them. McOsu also does feel a fair bit different than stable, which could have caused some of it. But there was one thing that I really wanted to see. Did his aim still have the quirks that were pointed out as suspicious last time? Because if his aim were to have the same quirks as last time, even if he was playing worse, it would still mean that he wasn't hacking, since it would mean that his aim really was his own. So let's look into it. First, what are we actually looking for? Well, last time, the main things that made Spare's aim reminiscent of aim assist were weird flicks off the end of sliders, and slowing down and snapping to individual nodes of a stream. If his aim still possesses these traits in McOsu, it would make a pretty good case that that's actually just how he aims. Let's cover sliders first, because they're the easiest to rule out. Since, although it's still really weird, Spare follows sliders the exact same way he did before, where instead of flowing through them like a normal player, he snaps onto them and then he snaps off the ends. This looked really suspicious the first time around, but the consistency with which he does these makes it really obvious that it's actually just a quirk of his playstyle. So with sliders out of the way, there's only the other, much more difficult topic to cover. Streams. Spare's streaming ability and aim were the two things that were really put into question in the report, because he seemed to get better overnight, and on top of that, he had some peculiar aim. But, crazily enough, when looking at his McOsu, it has almost the exact same uncanny snappiness. It's almost snappy to an absurd level, where even with White Cat skin, which doesn't have a long cursor trail, you could see how he plays streams by pretty much snapping at octagons. This is what the report mainly covered, but what really stood out to me was the way that he slowed down to individual notes of the stream, because it really does seem borderline impossible. The crazy thing is, though, that he actually does this in his gameplay. And especially if I turn it down to 10% speed, like the videos that were scrutinized, it's really obvious that it's happening. This is all pretty convincing, but there is still some evidence against Spare to take into account. Like this video, which uses one of Spare's replays overlaid onto his tablet. The overlay is definitely pretty sound, since it's made by this guy, who's made these for players like Vaxe and Whitecat, with the sync perfectly lined up. But this video, by the poster of the original Reddit thread, claims that his replay actually proves that Spare is using aim assist. So let's go through it. His first claim is that the movement that he's making doesn't sync up with the semicircle his cursor is making. But the part he's referring to has an insane amount of screen tearing because his hand moved over the tablet. Most of the claims in this video follow a fairly similar trend, with weird tearing or low quality making coming to any sort of conclusion nearly impossible. But there is one that's a bit easier to see, with this clip where his cursor does look a lot like it's going off the path his hand is moving. But it's still super hard to tell, and what this video conveniently leaves out are his Angreifer hard rock and his Cry Thunder hard rock plays that have much better tablet overlays, and look a lot less suspicious. This is also combined with one other really interesting thing that I didn't touch on last time. The back and forth between Spare and the person making these allegations. Spare said many times before that the person making the claims was spineless, and that they would slander him on one account and then defend him on another, just a social climb. There wasn't much evidence to support this the first time around, but now there's a fair bit more. The signs were already there the first time, with likes and comments disabled and the videos unlisted. But only a couple days ago, this person made a different Spare report on a different alt account. This post quickly racked up over 300 upvotes, which already made it one of the most upvoted on the OSU Report subreddit. That is, until he deleted the post and his Reddit account, with the only real proof I have of it even ever existing is a DM to a friend and the previously mentioned video. This doesn't exactly exude confidence from the poster, and seeing how he made fun of Spare at the end of the video for saying that he'd pretty much do this exact thing is pretty ironic. It's pretty crazy seeing all of the evidence come crashing down. but I think Idkey put best how we all got it wrong.
Dude, remember when I hit like 5 different edge notes in Uta? Why am I not banned yet? Remember when I shook so much on the last note? Why am I not banned yet? Come on. Oh my god, cursor movement is so weird. Oh, it's not. Cursor movement isn't Cookie Z's. You should ban him. Because its cursor's weird. It doesn't look like cookies. It doesn't look like white cats. It's like the most stupid fucking argument I've ever heard in my fucking life.
All of this is pretty conclusive to that Spare isn't cheating. But there were 2 things that could be pointed to as reasoning to why he would hack that is still yet to be addressed directly. His extensive past bans and his hiatus from Hard Rock after the accusations. So, I asked him myself. As to his past, he said that yes, he's hacked twice, both in 2013. The first was a time warp that he did on 3 separate maps along with another UK player. And the other, more interesting time, was when a player named Horo made a list of cheaters, which was pretty comprehensive, and it exposed a lot of players, including 2 of his favorites. After all of this, he was sort of disillusioned. He saw the attention that this brought them, and he decided to purposely get himself banned.
Gotta be honest.
He made no attempt to hide this, and he even asked Horo to spectate him. I think the important thing to take away from this was his reasoning, and how obvious he made it. Both times he hacked, he was provoked, not by wanting to impress people with cool scores, but first by another UK player, and then by the attention that ban would bring him. He also hacked very blatantly both times. All of this was also in 2013, which was 7 years ago. But how do we know he's telling the truth? Well, we don't. But with how quickly he responded to me, and the extensive detail of his response, it's pretty clear they didn't have much to hide. And also, if he was lying, why would he say that he hacked it all? Since, technically, the only thing officially on record was that he was restricted. And then there's his hiatus from Hard Rock after the accusations. It was one of the main reasons that people thought he was hacking, because if he really was so good at Hard Rock, why would he play it less after people accused him of cheating? It's a pretty reasonable thing to think, and Spare really hadn't said much on the situation. This might allude to a response that he didn't want to give, but instead, the reasoning I got was actually pretty sound. He said he had work, which checks out seeing as he went from almost daily streams while he was popping off with Hard Rock, to not even 1 a week on average. This still might beg the question, why didn't he play Hard Rock on those streams? But when you think about it, what might have been even worse for him would be not being able to replicate those Hard Rock scores on stream because he wasn't warmed up, since that would essentially certify what the allegations had been saying. So, what does this all mean? Well, Spare's strange aim that seemed like it might have been hacks previously is almost definitely his own. And with so much evidence for him in his Mikosu aim, his tablet overlay, and his accuser's fallback, I would honestly be shocked if he turned out to be hacking at this point. And then, with the amount of time that it seems like work is taking up for him, it's hard to blame him for getting a Raid Shadow Legends sponsor. And this is where I have to do a bit of an admission of guilt, because this is all stuff that I probably could have figured out the first time around if I had looked just a bit closer, which is the main reason I'm making this video, to hopefully fix any damage that may have been caused, especially since, after all these allegations, Spare lost a lot of motivation to play, which I think is pretty tragic. And after looking at all the evidence, the Spare case paints a very different picture than before. Not of someone manipulating his supporters and friends by hacking for a quick buck, but instead someone who is troubled by their past mistakes, busy with work, just using the skill they spent well over 2,000 hours developing to make their life just a bit easier. And I think that's pretty remarkable. I've also linked his Twitch in the description. Go check out his stream and show him some support. Especially since one of the most interesting things he said in our DM conversation is that soon he's going to have more time to play Hard Rock, and he's going to start going for scores of a similar magnitude, which should be pretty exciting.